Hello, everyone. Don't know why. I kind of was like mixed between wanting to say hi and hello, and it was like, hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the, 39th episode of Sisterhood Across States. I cannot believe I have come this far. I have 11 more locations, and then I have officially hit all of my local title holders essentially from every single state, and then I will open it up to whoever wants to be interviewed. So that's really exciting. I'm really just grateful for everyone who's tuned in. If you're watching now or later, feel free to ask questions below. I'd love to just build upon the questions I already have. Today I'm kind of rocking this almost Jackie Kennedy look, so it's all great. But Sisterhood Across States, episode 39, a series that I built to connect through technology to talk about local title holders from the Miss America organization about things that are important in their communities, their lives, and just getting to know them a little bit more. In my last episode, I was able to speak to a title holder all the way out from New Hampshire. I think I said it. I'm sure I said it right because I was practicing. There was tons of bloopers where I just totally said it wrong. But today I get to speak to a place that's near and dear to my heart, heart of America almost, and just it's DC. It's DC area. My dad works in that area, and I get to talk to a title holder who has competed in that area. Her name is Andolyn, and she was first runner-up to Miss DC. So I'm really excited to kind of pick her brain, talk to her more, and learn more about her. So let me go ahead and bring her on.
Hi.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
awesome. I'm like, it's a little bit low on my end. Let me see if I can fix this real quick. Loved it. Yep, it's me. Totally.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. It's so nice to meet you. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am awesome. Thank you so much for being a part of my episode and my series, especially so late. I know Eastern time is always like, you just never know when you're going to be able to speak to someone. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
No
I'm
problem.
going to jump right in and start asking questions. Are you originally from the DC area?
No, so I was actually born in Waukegan, Illinois. My parents are retired naval officers. So Waukegan's my birthplace. And then when I was around 3, I moved to Chesapeake, Virginia, and have been here ever since. And then moved to DC into the city about a year ago or so, but living in the DC metro area for about the past 4 years.
Wow. And so you're a military child, both of your
Yes.
parents. What was that like?
It was interesting. I'm also the only child, so I'm the only daughter at that. So my parents were definitely strict, kept me on my toes, but I'm really thankful for it. I think that, of course, also living in the area that I live in, it's a very strong military community. And so it teaches you from a very young age to appreciate what our men and women are doing in the armed forces and to have that sense of patriotism. And so I'm excited now. I'm a naval officer. I followed in their steps. So all 3 of us are go Navy, beat Army. But I'm excited to bring my background of psychology and mental health into the Navy.
That is awesome. Sorry, Dad. My dad is active Army, so
Oh, sorry.
No, that is amazing. I love that, and I'm obviously a military child as well, and that's amazing that you followed in their footsteps to be specifically a Navy officer as well. Now, did they kind of like, guide you into the Navy, or it was always just something that you admired?
I always admired it. My dad has definitely always been more gun-ho than my mom, so he wanted me to go to the Naval Academy, the whole 9. But I actually ended up joining the Navy through a program called HPSP, which is a scholarship that the Navy offers for anybody furthering their education. So doctors, dentists, psychologists, lawyers as well. And you have to go through an extensive interview process, application process to make sure you fit the requirements, the demands to be a naval officer. And then they pick 5 students across the nation to be in that specific field. So for me, it's 5 Navy psychologists in my cohort that we will have our tuitions covered by the Navy. We also get a stipend. And then upon us completing our program, we get promoted to the rank of lieutenant. And then we also have to give the Navy back 4 years as a Navy psychologist.
Wow, that is amazing. And you said extensive interview. I'm sure that
Yes. So
So,
it's you have two naval officers, and they're both former psychologists as well, and it's about an hour long interview. And I remember coming out of it, my mom was like, how were you able to do that? And I was like, this is fortunately the kind of skills that we gain in pageantry, and that, it was easy. I was like, this is something I could do in my sleep, because you just learn that an interview is basically about people getting to know you, and seeing how you fit in, likewise how you feel like you fit with them. So it was great.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for your service that you're actively doing, and then also your parents. I'm going to try not to, I'm going to try to be surprised as possible, because I've done some
Oh,
extensive social media searching, and I'm like, I've seen pictures of her parents. I've seen you're awesome. So I'm
thank
already a fan,
you.
just so you know.
Yeah.
But for the people who haven't completely looked at her social media, you'll check it out later. What about a fun fact about the DC area?
Oh gosh. Okay, so I actually learned this. So anybody that's been in DC, if you're going east and west, everything is alphabetical, and then if you're going north and south, it's all based on numbers. But the only alphabet letter that's missing is the letter J, and apparently that's because in Old English times, the I and the J look just alike, so they just decided to not have a J Street in DC. So it's the only one.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Wow, that's cool. I
Yep.
have to check that out, because my family lives in Maryland and my dad works in the area. And so now I'm like all about the history, trying to learn more, being a full on tourist essentially. What about a fun fact about you?
So the one that I love to share is that my initials are ATM, and my dad did not mean to do that on purpose, but I think it makes sense, being the only daughter, that I definitely am a little bit of a money machine.
I too love that. That is awesome. That is a cool acronym. Mine's just SNJ, which I'm like, yeah, ATM is much cooler. Wow. What about your favorite food?
Oh, my grandma's chocolate cake, hands down,
Mm.
hands down. So my mom's side of the family, they're all from South Carolina. So that deep Southern food is just unmatched.
There's a saying as well. I feel like it's like in the South, it's like someone put their foot in it.
Oh
And a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
of people don't know this saying. And I remember saying it to a friend out here in Arizona, they're like, is it good? Is it okay? And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
it's delicious.
That
So,
means it's amazing. If somebody in the South ever says like "bless your heart," that's one to like be concerned, because that sounds nice. It sounds nice, but if somebody's saying that to you, it's like, they're being shady. Like,
yes, absolutely. And then what is one word that you would say describes you?
I think I would say ambitious. I think ever since I've been little, I've just always been very goal oriented and focused, and I love challenging myself and finding different ways to do different things. So, yeah, I think ambitious.
Nice. And we've talked about what you currently do professionally. What about your dream job as a child?
My dream job as a child is I wanted to be a pediatrician. So I'm not too far off. I'm just not in the medical the medical side of things. But yeah, I always loved to help kids ever since I was a little girl. Wanting to be a doctor, wanting to also be a mom. I found being a mom to be an incredible, job. So I think that I'm matching up my field right now in psychology, being a therapist. I love what I do. And so to be able to do this for the rest of my life is truly a dream.
That is amazing. I know you. I see you have some fans below, kind of commenting, which is awesome. Someone says, "Don't tell secrets."
Yes,
If you guys have
that's
any questions in the meantime, feel free to ask them below as well. Are all ears, and I'd love to answer any questions too.
Bree is
Try
also a local title holder in Virginia, so she might also be someone good to interview. I think she probably,
to
so
connect with. Follow
connection,
me,
that
Brittany.
works.
She just plugged you in. Awesome. So when kind of jumping into the competition portion of questions, when and why did you start competing?
So I started competing when I was very young, when I was 4 years old. I'm naturally pretty introverted, but when I was four, I was way, way more shy. And also, my mom heard me. I think she would say that I was like screaming around the house, but she and my dad knew pretty early that I needed to get out of my shell. And when they heard me screaming around the house, they were like, "Okay, so like she wants to sing. Let's get her into the arts." And they found that pageants was a good way to get me out of that. So I entered pageants at 4, and it really pushed me out there to start to talk to people of all walks of life, to learn more about myself. And it also helped me to foster my talents. And there's a lot of great things that have come from pageants. I think if you do pageants right, it's not all about the crown or the win at the end of it, because it can just connect you to so much. And so for me, my pageant career, helped me to excel vocally. And then I was in the Governor's School for the Arts in high school. And then also, like with what we've talked about with interviewing skills, but also scholarship. So I was also Miss Virginia's Outstanding Teen. And the year that I won that was the first year that they offered a full tuition scholarship to Hollis University, which is where I ended up getting my degree from for undergrad. And that covered over $100,000. And so I think that that's the part of pageantry people don't always get to see, is just the longevity and the things that it can really do for you.
Oh, wow. What a blessing. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Full ride scholarship. The year that you went in, or that you won.
Right.
So that is fantastic. Have you always stuck with the Miss America organization? And kind of what was the different transitions if you didn't?
So I did it, and I can't really remember. I know I'm going to miss tons. But growing up especially, I was a princess for the Miss America organization, but I did, like American Co-Ed, I did NAM, I did tennis. Just as ways, again, to meet more people, to get out of that shell. And in the younger years, they didn't have MAO. Virginia had Virginia's Outstanding Preteen, and I was able to do that and compete in that and represent on that and within that title as well. And then there was also a time, I think before I went into Miss, I did the Collegiate America system. And for me, that was just a way, I needed a bridge. I didn't feel like I was quite ready yet to step onto the Miss stage. And so I wanted to have practice doing something fun, and another way to get out of my shell, because Collegiate America doesn't precisely match up with MAO either. Okay. So it was another avenue to explore. And I'm really thankful for that. I think that you definitely should give yourself a break, and definitely should broaden your horizons whenever you get a chance, just because I think there's something to learn within each system.
Absolutely. Hi, Kate. Kate's a former Miss Arizona.
Hi.
Love you so much. So where is what state did you compete in for the majority of your time?
Virginia. Yeah. So nice. I last year was actually my first year competing in DC.
Wow. Okay, so let's dive into that, because you were first runner-up. What was that experience like, the transition over states, and just talk to me about the overall.
I loved it. I could not say enough. I had a great time in Virginia, but I cannot say enough amazing things about DC. I love the way that it's set up from the very beginning and how close you get to the girls. So I think, like you and I were talking about, in DC, you don't have locals, it always throws people off a little bit, but I think it creates a really unique system, because then we get to know our board very intimately, and the board is all run by former Miss DCs. And then they also set up so many like mock interviews for you, talent preps for you throughout the time that you're preparing. So you find out that you make it for Miss DC, I want to say around January, and then you have until June, because that's usually when the pageant is, to prepare. Right. And when you're having the mock interviews, it's not like you're solely interviewing with pageant people. You are interviewing with like local businessmen and women, CEOs, people that own their own businesses, that come from all walks of life, professionally, politically, in sexual orientation, race, like everything. You get the full run of the gamut. And it's great, because you can imagine in any role as a title holder, but specifically if you're in DC, you have to know how to switch up and have different kinds of conversations with different kinds of people at any given time. You have to be able to go to a gala one day and then, be in the meeting the next day with the CEO selling your platform or fundraising for Children's Miracle Network. And they really do such a great job in getting us ready and knowing that if it doesn't work in the real world, if your goals for Miss DC and your goals in the real world don't match up, then you're in it for the wrong reasons. And
right.
I've never experienced the kind of joy that after competing in Miss DC and getting first runner-up, I told Caitlin when we were at her send-off, she made being first runner-up so easy, because I knew that she would do a great job as Miss DC. That I was like, I know people say first runner-up sucks, but like, it's kind of good. Like, I like it. And I knew right after I wanted to come back. So I'm super excited. I know Corona put everything on hold, but I'm excited for, 2021.
Wow, that is amazing. I mean, even the fact that you hit on the conversations that happen, and switching that up within the DC area. I mean, I feel like that is, I would say, almost every pageant or competitors' fear is those politically fueled questions. But you're in a politically fueled area, so you're
Yeah.
bound to get those questions regardless. So that is fantastic practice, I'm sure. But what are some? I know you said you kind of qualified to compete. What are some of the qualifications that DC looks for before you are selected to compete?
So it's the same basic ones as like all of the states in terms of the requirements of living in the city or going to school in the city or working in the city. You have to meet that requirement in one way or the other. And then all the other part of it is that you do I want to say it's like a 5-minute mock interview, and then you perform your full talent for a panel. And you receive feedback after that as to how you did, what you could work on, suggestions they would have for you. But those are the two things that you have to do in order to ensure you move forward.
Wow, it's such an. I think the first time I found out about non-local title holders were like in Maine. And I was like, wait, you don't have local? What does that mean? And so I was so curious. So that
Yeah.
is fantastic. I love that that they do that for you all. I feel like you guys have. Do you have more competitors within their system in that case?
I want to, I don't know how much it matches up, but I want to say we at least have 18 to 20. So we do have a good amount of
Wow.
girls.
Yeah.
It's exciting because I think when we talk about like marketing and we talk about the Miss America organization, DC does a phenomenal job when you think about it in that lens, because so many of the girls that compete are not like seasoned competitors. It's new girls just learning about this organization and wanting to get involved and wanting to stay involved. And so it's
Right.
a really unique sort of area. It's really cool.
That is amazing. I know you said you're an only child. My sister is all about, like, when can I join? I just need to learn how to walk in heels. So she's very excited. What is your talent?
So I sing opera. My talent song that I did last year was "Summertime" from the opera Porgy and Bess. But that's what I started learning when I was 4 years old. I wanted to sing like Beyonce. Uh, that's the other fun fact I should have shared. My dog is named after Beyonce. His name is Malls. Um, but so when my mom took me to sort of develop this voice, my voice coach was like, well, if you want to sing like Beyonce, you got to learn opera. And I was like, well, all right. And I wasn't a fan at first. I didn't like it at all. But the older I got, the more that I learned. The first opera that I really just like connected with was Carmen. And I actually got to be in the children's choir in it. And so from there, I was like, oh, this is cool. Like they have these elaborate stories, the things that these people can do with their voices, like how insanely incredible. And since then, I have felt like I could transition from different genres and different styles, but opera still holds a pretty special place in my heart.
Wow. So, okay, so you're obviously a fan of Beyonce. Who else are you a big fan of?
Vocally or just in general?
Vocally, but also now I'm curious about in general.
Oh, gosh. Okay. So vocally, I would say Beyonce and Mariah Carey. I've recently gotten into Snow Allegra. I also love Ariana Grande for sure, and Lady Gaga, and then Adele. In general, I would say my biggest girl crush is J Lo, easily.
What?
J
Wow.
Lo is insane. Like to look at like J Lo at 50 is just like goals. Like
Yes, she
great.
is a go-getter for sure. But Ariana Grande, I listen to like every morning, just about every single morning. Beyonce's in there. They're bound to end up in the same radio twist with all of their. They just sing so beautifully, honestly. So I'm all with you with all of your artists that you chose. And so your talent, talking a little bit more about it. What are some other things that you've kind of performed in the past? Have you always stuck with opera? I know you said you've kind of.
Right. So I
Yeah.
think that there may have been only one pageant that I veered from opera, or one pageant, I guess, season. I sang Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, and I love Hallelujah. I would sing that song over and over and over and over. I just love it so much. But other songs that I've sang are not Summertime, Porgy Amor, Quando Minvo, O Mio Babino Caro, and then when I was a teen, I did Je veux vivre.
Wow. I wish I knew all of these. They sound beautiful. But do you have any of your singing that's posted on your social media?
So it should be on my, and I should know this, but if you Google my name, I have a website. It's www.andolynmedina.com, and you'll get to see different videos. You'll probably see ones of my childhood, which I don't love, but you'll get to see those. And then I was also fortunate enough when I was Virginia's Outstanding Teen to perform the anthem for President Obama, and so you will see that. And I've since continued to perform the anthem for the Wizards or different politicians if they ever need me to.
Oh my goodness. Okay, yes, I remember seeing a picture with you and Obama. That's crazy. So you met a president. That's
Yes.
amazing.
Insane.
That was through Virginia though, right? Like you were
Right.
at Virginia's Outstanding Teen at the time, you said?
Right. Yes. I had to be about 16 years old. So it came about because I performed a lot for Congressman Bobby Scott, who's the local congressman in the area. And so when President Obama came for his rally that year, he asked the congressman who he would recommend to sing the anthem, and the congressman recommended me. And of course, like the bottom fell out. Like I was like, what in the world? This is crazy. And so I remember the anthem is like, people don't think it's a hard song, but it is forever the song I get the most nervous about, because it's the one song that if you forget the lyrics, everybody knows, and you're like a horrible American, and like you feel horrible. So I remember being 16, I went backstage, and the Secret Service were there, and I told them about that nerve of mine, and they were like, oh, it's fine. Like if you mess up, just smile and wave. Like nobody will care. Like you look pretty, you have on a crown, you'll be fine. And I remember going up there, being behind the podium that President Obama later spoke at, and I got through it. I did a good job, but then a bit later, after the president finished speaking, it came around and he shook my hand. And in the photo, I can maybe try to share it on my page later, but in the photo, I'm shaking his hand while my other hand is on his shoulder. And I'm just like very comfortable, as if President Obama is like my lifelong pal. And my mom was standing next to us, just like getting it. And she's like, did you realize you had your hand on the president of the United States? But he was great. He asked me like what college I wanted to go to, what were my dreams, what were my aspirations. He definitely seemed very like fatherly and just like an uncle, just really caring about, what young girls were doing and their goals.
Wow, that's an amazing story. I would have been so nervous. I would have probably been like, I can't do this. That is amazing. So that's another fun fact about you.
Yeah.
On that. I did see, kind of going back to competition, you in the Sweetheart pageant as well, representing D.C. And you know Isabel Ticlo. Saw a picture of you.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot. Yes, Sweetheart, yes.
Yes, that is amazing. So I'm, like I said, a huge fan. What about your favorite portion of competition and why?
Interview, 10 out of 10. I think it's the adrenaline rush, and again, I think just it's the portion of the competition in the past that has made me the most nervous, and that was, I think, my biggest insecurity, because I was so shy starting out. That now to see my growth and to get to a place where I can have fun and I can realize that it really is just about getting to know who I am, getting to know, my goals, my dreams for not just my life, but also the organization, makes it really, really exciting. And I just thrive off the adrenaline and not knowing what they're going to ask or how they're going to ask it, specifically in a state like, area like DC, where you know that you're going to get everything under the sun, and you just got to be able to do it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, anyone that says that interview is their favorite, I like to ask, what has been a memorable question that you've been asked, and just kind of what was your response to that?
So the one I have two, I guess. So one of them was my onstage question at Miss DC. That one stands out because on stage is always just interview is my favorite, but on stage makes me nervous because it's like you never know. And I think that we were supposed to get platform questions, but my onstage question was actually about what precedent do I think it would have set if President Trump issued the drone strikes. And I forget exactly where he was trying to issue drone strikes that specific occasion. But that was my question. And it just so happened that right before the day of the pageant, I talked to my parents about it and was like, hey, I really think that I need to know this. I'm military, so I need to know everything under the sun about the military. Let's have a conversation about it, and like, let's think about both sides. So then when the conversation happened on stage, I just sort of like felt my body go into muscle memory and just like answer it. And then I got off stage and was like I didn't, it's just one of those, I think that happens to me a lot on stages.
Wow.
Just go. And
yeah,
it's just the adrenaline and being able to trust yourself that you know how to answer it.
Go with your gut. Absolutely. Yes. And the muscle memory. And what a lucky moment that was to have that conversation with your parents the day before.
Right.
That is awesome. I find myself talking to especially in quarantine times, talking to myself way more than I should. And just like walking through scenarios, questions, anything that I see on the news, I'm like, how would you answer this? And it's just like a never ending interview process. So I love that you had that conversation with your parents. It's great practice for anyone who watches.
For sure.
What about one memorable appearance for you?
So I think that would be my appearance when I was Virginia's Outstanding Teen. I was volunteering at a local Boys and Girls Club, and I was talking to them about authenticity, integrity, and just owning who they were. And it was in that conversation, they had to be about like 6 or older, I would say. And I just realized like I wasn't being honest with them, and I wasn't being honest with myself. And it led me to share with that group that I had been diagnosed with scoliosis, which, to those of you watching, if you don't know what scoliosis is, it's a curvature of the spine, and it has varying degrees or levels of severity. And so for me and my scoliosis, I had to wear a back brace for 21 hours of the day. And as a teenager, I was extremely insecure and sort of self-conscious of that. I remember girls at school, saying that I was stuck up because of the way that I walked, because I walked like so tall with such great posture, literally not knowing that I had a brace on underneath that was keeping me, all together and forcing me to do it. And it was quite painful. And when I was speaking to those kids, something just came about me that was like, it's important for me to share this and to own that this is something that I'm very insecure about. And at that point, it wasn't even something that I'd shared with my closest friends that was going on in my life. And so in sharing that, there was actually a little girl in the audience that raised her hand and was like, I have scoliosis too. And it was this big moment because they had no idea how insecure I was feeling, and that her being able to say that she had it helped fill a hole for me and to feel like I wasn't alone. And I think it really just drove the point that in giving back and in community service, there's so much that can be gained. It's not just necessarily about who you are helping, but there's ways in which they help you and they feel a piece of you too. And I'd like to share that story because it just shows that no matter how old you are, no matter where you are in life, you always have something to learn. There's always something to gain, and you always have something in common with somebody else.
That is a beautiful story. That touched me, and my eyes got a little watery. Like the same as Brie. I was just watching that. I'm like, oh, okay, keep it together. You're interviewing. I love that story. That is a really beautiful thing. I think appearances in general are just something that stick with you forever, good and bad. Let me just say that it's just an implant in your heart. Now, diving into your social impact initiative, I know you've been in pageantry for some time. It's gone from platform to social impact. The wording's all different. It's caused a lot of craziness. But what is your social impact?
So my social impact is demand an end, stop human trafficking and child exploitation. And it came about because my master's degree is in forensic psych. And so upon leaving the degree, I had to do an internship. And I did mine with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is their headquarters are in Alexandria, Virginia. And so while I was there, I was with the family advocacy group, and I was charged with often calling parents and siblings of missing children every day. Had to be about 4 to 5 parents or calls that I made. And in those calls, it just opened my eyes to how pervasive this problem is. I think it's something that we like to say is happening someplace else. It's not happening here. But in fact, it's one of the largest growing criminal industries. It's $1 billion industry. And DC in particular is one of the highest areas because, as you can imagine, it's a huge metropolitan city. There's always things coming in, always things coming out. And so it really just opened my eyes to what is happening and that we must continue to do more. And also that I noticed that I was just so ill-equipped. So I began to start to think about who else is ill-equipped, who else is this impacting, and thinking about how that impacts marginalized communities. And so that set me to want to do more to talk about prevention, awareness, and advocacy.
Wow. So what are some of the resources that you maybe connect others to start that information of resources?
Yeah, so of course, NCMEG is the number one. If there's ever, and of course, that's namely for children, but it is the number one. I would say if there's ever any concern about sexual exploitation, missing children, call them. There's also RAIN, which is the sexual assault hotline, and then the National Center for Victims I used to work there as an assistant specialist, so I often fielded calls from victims across the nation, and they're certainly a resource as well. And then there's the police, and also certain states, I know Virginia especially, at any of the, what is the word I'm looking for? At any of the rest areas, they have information on who you can contact as well. And so those would be the main ones. And then locally in DC, I'm also part of an organization called Fair Girls. So that's also a referral source, and Courtney's House.
Wow. So just like you've expanded totally on your topic of your social impact initiative. And as far as kind of elevating that, for Miss DC or even Miss America, what are some ideas that you've kind of been brainstorming, I would say, that you want to kind of implement?
So one of the things that I've been doing, I'll start with NCMEG, is at least getting my training through NCMEG and Fair Girls to be able to give human trafficking one-on-one trainings. And I think that that's important to begin in schools and as well in after-school programs to specifically talk to parents. I think there's always a concern, specifically surrounding sex, of, will that scare kids? Will they be able to handle this conversation? And what we're seeing now is that this does not discriminate at any age, and that there's things that kids are engaging in as early as age 10 that they don't, realize could have significant impacts on their livelihoods and the livelihoods of others. And they're also the first line of defense to know if something is happening with their friends, with their loved ones. And so it is important that we start there with education. As it relates to prevention, in doing that education, but we also have to become stricter on our laws. So right now, the punishment for human trafficking in DC, for example, may not be the same as what it is in Florida. And so what that tells a person is what they can get away with and in what state and what they can do and where there are loopholes. And so I think we have to push for national legislation to across the board come down very, very hard. I know, or I don't know if many people have watched the Jeffrey Epstein case on Netflix, but I think that that is a really important one to watch and to sort of see how pervasive this is and
Right.
why it's a billion-dollar industry. You're literally having billionaires profit off of young men and young girls and become unstoppable.
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that is still on my watch list. I actually was having a conversation with a friend over the weekend, just with brunch and just talking about this overarching problem and, what is it that we can do first and foremost. And like you said, educate yourselves, because it was like you could go into this big rabbit hole of what can I do next? And it's like, okay, start educating yourself and then becoming an advocate against it. And when you see something, say something. It sounds very, very simple and dissected, but I think that so much change can come from that alone.
And I think too, it's realizing that the story that maybe we were told of, like, don't get in a white van, don't talk to strangers, that's still important to share, but it's important that people know that this has changed. The way that this looks is so different, is so psychologically manipulative. It's your family members, it's people that your kids trust, it's mentors, teachers. So it's also something that I like to share with my family as well. It's also important, no matter how early or how young your kid is, to teach them the importance of consent, because that's a very important conversation. Let them know that they're allowed to say no, that they don't have to go with anybody, that if somebody asks them to keep a secret, that's not okay. And let them know who they can trust, who they can rely on, and what to sort of do in these situations if they ever arise.
Oh, I cannot agree more. I think reflecting now back on my own childhood, I think my mom did a wonderful job at telling us, early, very, very early. I can't even, I was so young, but just talking about the value of consent. I mean, she never used the word consent, but she just knew to
Right.
be like, these are things that are okay, these are things that are not, and this is how you can tell me, and this is a safe spot to tell me. And establishing that, like as parents, as grandparents, or guardians, or just anyone, a liaison, advocate for someone is important. So I'm so glad that you're doing this, and I kind of want to dive into what are some main things about your social impact that you find most important.
Hmm. I think it's 100% that awareness, and sort of tying into what you were saying. When I started making those calls to parents and siblings, I began to think of my own childhood, and I began to think about how strict I thought my parents were, how crazy their rules were. And I just realized I had no idea of what is happening. And so I think that, of course, education and awareness is number one. It's the only way that we can know the signs of both, what predators are like, what their actions are, but also the ways that we can know, what's going on with a person's mental health, and how to be able to use that to also find out about human trafficking. I would say the next level is, of course, advocacy. So speaking to your legislatures, speaking to your lawmakers, ensuring that victims of human trafficking are not punished for that. In certain states, I think,
Mm,
if it hasn't changed, you could still be arrested and still do time for being a human trafficking victim, which of course makes it that much harder for people to come forward, and for them to also get their lives started. And I think overall as well, it's just having empathy for this, and to do everything in your power, even if you aren't directly impacted, to raise your voice and to spread awareness. Because as long as there are victims in human trafficking, which there are over 100 million easily, as long as there are victims of this, we are not all free.
mm, mm. That is really powerful. Um, Kind of just a misconception within your
Mhm.
social impact. What are one or a few that you have that you'd like to kind of debunk?
Yeah. Okay. So that it can't happen to boys or men. I think that's
Mm,
the biggest one. If anything, we know that those numbers are largely off, and that's because of the stigma surrounding what it means to come forward about this. So I would say that's the main one. Um, it doesn't discriminate. Beside that, it doesn't matter your background, your race, your ethnicity. Everybody is just as likely to be impacted. And then I just had the last, in terms of terminology, I think that we've all been used to calling people prostitutes, um,
mm,
and in many cases they aren't prostitutes. That's not something that they want to do where they want to be. They are coerced, and so what we see with human trafficking is that there are many ways that it takes place. I actually did a U visa for an elderly woman. She was about 54, and came to the States in order to get a better life. But instead, she was told that she would be coming here to work to be able to provide her for her family, and yet was sold into sex trafficking essentially. And so again, that just goes to speak as like, it's not an age, it's not race, it's not voluntary. There are many different ways that people can be coerced into this. And so, it does require a lot of empathy when somebody is telling you something, even if it doesn't make 100% of like sense. You have to have a lot of empathy to understand that these situations are complicated, complex, and there might be a lot of reasons why people literally physically cannot leave, or emotionally
mm.
feel like they can't.
Right, right. I know someone commented, I love what you shared with family about respecting the kids' boundaries to make them, um, to not make
Oh,
them
that's not.
hug if they don't want to hug someone. So yeah, going back to consent, I love that you shared some of those misconceptions as well. Just within, what it looks like, because it really, it varies, and that is very,
Yeah.
very true. Um, I kind of like switching gears almost. Misconceptions within competing. You've been competing since you were 4. What are some misconceptions within the competition realm?
Hmm. I think that we all can't support each other, that there has to be one winner at the end of it. My friend Bree, and we also have a friend Chelsea, I'm really grateful for the friendships that I've been able to make in pageantry, because I think that it shows that there's more than one way to win. to excel and to have fun. And if you're doing it right, pageants should never be the end goal. I think it was Debbie Turner that talked about that. I think she said, like, okay, I'm Miss America, and what else? Like, what's next? Like, Miss America is never the end all be all. And so I think that we have to work really hard, especially in the system and in the ways that you're providing and networking and connecting each other, to uplift each other in whatever ways that we can to ensure that we all succeed. I think there's enough room for all of us to be able to eat and to gain what we can from this world.
Right. And if you look at, I mean, you mentioned that the directors were all former DC, Miss DCs. So, like, you look at the legacy that's being left, and then they come back and either volunteer within the system or volunteer within the community. I know Kate, who hopped in for a bit, she's the former Miss Arizona, is doing so much stuff in the community. So you see like a ripple effect. It's not the end all be all, like you mentioned. So that was some great things that you hinted on. I kind of want to revisit real quick. You are going into psychology, right?
Yes. So I'm currently getting my doctorate in clinical psychology.
Well, yes. So you went and did your exams, right?
Yes. Yeah. Last week was my prompt exam.
So is that the end of the doc, or that's like getting into your doctorates?
So it's midway. So you have 4 years, and then your last year is your externship, or at least that's what I'm doing through the Navy. And so your second year is what they say is usually your hardest year, because in addition to coursework, you're also seeing patients and having a full caseload. And so at the end of your second year, you have to take comps, which is a overall 10-hour exam spread over 2 days, 5 questions each, where you just have to write everything, data dump. It's about, the assessments, the diagnoses, interventions, essentially a massive test of like the whole year, what you've learned, and your ability to write it under time constraints.
My goodness, that is incredible. Whoever's just tuning in or watching later on, this is a superwoman here going
exhausting.
Doctor. This is insane. My mom's always asking me, like, where are you going to go for it? Because I'm in my master's currently. And she's like talking to me about doctorates, and I'm like, I just need to breathe real quick. Let me just breathe. I love that. Very ambitious. Like you said, your word that describes you, ambitious for sure. Going into, since you love interviews so much, the last 30 seconds of the interview, in 30 seconds or less, if you can tell me why you want to be Miss DC. I'm going to go ahead and start a timer, and you can start whenever.
Okay. So I think that one of the most important things for me is that whenever I live someplace and I benefit from what it is giving me, I think it's important to pour back into the community, whether that for me be as, a community mental health clinician, a naval officer, or the next Miss DC. I want to be able to provide education, awareness, and advocacy for our community. And I want to be able to show Washingtonians and show the young girls that are growing up that the only limits that are in their life are the boundaries that they set for themselves, but the sky's the limit.
Oh, time. That was good. That was so good. I was just observing it on. I was like, don't forget to check the time. That was amazing. That was phenomenal. That was awesome. I'm a super fan. Last question for you is, what would be your advice to someone who wants to compete?
I would say 100% do it. But I think the best advice is, similar to what we've learned in Miss DC. If it doesn't work in the real world, don't cut it for pageants. I think if you do it correctly, your goals should line up. Who you are in the real world should be also who you are in the pageant world. And I think that's truly the best way to push yourself to succeed. It's the ultimate network. It's the ultimate way to continue to make friendships and to do what you need to do in this life. So
fantastic. Someone says yay. I feel the same way. I love that so much. Thank you so much for being a part of my series. This last little bit of section, I kind of just leave it as an open forum, either if you want to plug in any more resources about your social impact initiative, if you want to ask me any questions. I know sometimes it's just like all feeding through, but this stage is yours, essentially.
No, thank you so much for having me. Again, I think for those that are tuning in, so I said resources. Nationally would be the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The the National Center for Victims of Crime, RAIN, which is the sexual assault hotline. I forgot to mention one, which is also Polaris, which is the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And then also your local police. But usually calling one of those are really great to get that information, that resource. And you can call them even if you aren't sure a crime has been committed. So you could call them just if you see something or you hear something that seems a little bit sketchy and you're worried about how to proceed. They're great people to be able to run it by. And then locally, if you are in the DC area, please reach out to me. But also some organizations there. Like I said, NCMEG is local, National Center for Victims of Crime, local, RAIN, local, Polaris, local. And then you also have smaller nonprofits such as Fair Girls and Courtney's House as well that you can also reach out to get involved and to get engaged. We certainly need more people to raise their voices and raise awareness. So again, even if you aren't in DC, call your legislatures, learn more about what's happening, join your local human trafficking task force. I'm in one in DC, and they provide a human trafficking yearbook each year for you to see how your state matches up and what your state is doing. So right now DC has a C, and hopefully by the time that I'm, at least through, I can continue to work our way to A.
Wow, that is phenomenal. I love all that advice. I was writing stuff down currently because I have a friend who's is a super advocate for this, and so diving into this for Arizona would be awesome. So thank you for sharing, and again, being on episode 39 of Sisterhood Across States. I can't wait till I fly into DCA again. I'm gonna hit you up and
let me know
and grab brunch or something soon.
Yes.
But thank you again. Loved having you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night. I know it's nighttime over there. I have to remember that. But thank you again, and I'll be sure to post this soon.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you for having me.
Bye.